Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I want to start with a little bit about your background. You have such a strong background. Been reading about you online. Will you talk a little bit about how you got into HR?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to be an HR practitioner when I was around 16, 17, which is, from what I've heard, the feedback that I've gotten is kind of unusual. I grew up in New York City. All of my friends are artists. It's a high energy city. Everything is go fast. And then also there's a lot of retail. And I worked in retail, and I worked in different organizations. My first job was at the Joseph Papp Public Theater in downtown, and I was so connected to the interaction between the employees, the employer, like the management structure, what we were told to do, how we connected to the entire experience, the patrons that came and saw the plays, the actors. I was just so connected to all of that. Now, I did not have that language at 16. Over the years, I've developed it, and I always was interested in understanding the dynamics of how people like go through their career journey. Why do they choose jobs? Like, it was interesting because it was very diverse. It was like it was my first job, and then at 16 years old, but then there was some people there that was much older than I was doing the same job, who were, kind of doing this every single summer and had different interests and things like that. And I just thought that was so fascinating. So that's kind of like started to pique my interest in the space of HR.
Awesome. So I was going to ask you where your passion for people came from, but it sounds like really was that first role where you began to make all those connections.
Yeah.
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 Tell me a little about your current role as Chief People Officer at Help Scout.
Yeah. So Help Scout is, I want to say, one of those companies that what attracted me to that company really, for out of all the organizations I've worked with in the past, really focused on what the people experience really means to them. It is held at the same bar as the quality of the product, and what we do for our external clients. And it really, really makes the job as chief people officer so meaningful. So, what I do there is, very forward thinking, how to grow and scale the team, how to create policies and practices that make sense for people to feel growth, and also treat employees like adults. We're very transparent in every way. We share everything. We hold space for people when they have questions or concerns. So it's quite a very unique organization.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm going to move into our first segment called Story Time.
Welcome to Story Time. Story Time. Story Time.
Let me give you a story.
I want to just start a little bit and talk about your dual master's degree in industrial organizational psychology and organizational behavior. And I know you also have experience in a lot of different industries. Can you talk a little about how your education has prepared you to work across industries?
Yeah. So, I mean, my education, really, and I would say that 5 times fast. It's so long. It's so long.
Yeah.
So my education, I was extremely intentional. I decided to go to Brooklyn College because I felt that institution, anyone who was in psychology or any type of like major in that area, any famous, well-known psychologists influenced the industry either went there or taught there. The chairman of my, who created my program, Dr. Buzzy Chenoweth, he was a student of Abraham Maslow, who did the hierarchy of needs. And I can give you more examples of, where like some of these very famous studies were done at Brooklyn College. So the energy around like psychology of the workplace and IO psychology really was really rooted and had a pretty strong program. I was intentional in that sense where I focused every single fiber of my being into my education. So I didn't work for 2 years. I worked in a laboratory, in a cognitive neuroscience laboratory to kind of like, have some pocket money, but I really like focused myself. And I think what was so rewarding about that is I really wanted to dedicate time to really understand the dynamics of humans and individual within the workplace. I never wanted to, I went into this, I don't want to be the typical HR person that pushes paper around, builds policy, doesn't influence, motivators or intent. And I wanted to be able to be in a space where I can challenge business leaders and also show up as like almost like a product leader. Like I have this expertise, I have this knowledge, I have grit to it. And when I enter in the workforce, like I'm going to bring that with me. So that's how my education really influenced what I did. Typically with people with my degree, they go into like people analytics, because it's a lot of experimental psychology, a lot of like, understanding how interactions work. If you do this one thing and we get this outcome, like what are we looking at? We're not looking at from a data driven standpoint. So that's typically the runway of my role, but I decided I thought very big of my career in grad school. And I said to myself, okay, I'm going to learn this stuff because I know this is like the center and I feel like people are going to care about hard science. If I go back a little bit, I worked in a cognitive neuroscience lab in my undergrad, and I got an undergrad in neuroscience. And I wanted to really like use that brain science to kind of show like more teeth into what I do, and ask the right questions. And I wanted to kind of say to myself, when I get into the workforce, like I am going to be a different kind of HR people leader than the rest of my peers, tenured or not. And I want to be able to move light years ahead of how they're thinking. And that's how that's influenced my career.
That's awesome. I want to talk about a little bit, dive into that a little bit, and can make a connection between what's happening right now in the world with the pandemic and all the, social injustice and just how humans are feeling. It's a scary time. It's a whole new way of living, working, being at home, going to the grocery store. Everything's changed drastically, and it's been tough. It's tough on humans who are also employees. As someone in HR and also a leader, what should HR and leaders be doing to help humans who are employees along during this time?
Might be a very provocative statement, but I think I need to make it. As hard as it has been for the pandemic and social unrest and all the things that we needed to do, what we've been doing and how I've been working, I strongly believe that this held up a serious mirror for a lot of HR leaders to work and be different, and businesses to open up their minds, hearts, and souls to the value that the department brings. And unfortunately, it took an event like this or a series of events like this to kind of get to that place. But this is the type of work that is being pushed and required of us now is the work that we should have been doing from day one. And example of that is we really need to be focusing on the human experience within the workplace. There is this concept where you leave your self-identity at the door and you come in and you assume the identity of the organization. That's actually a quote from Adam Smith. And why I'm so against that is like, that's how industries have been for at least for like the last like 100 years, right? It's been kind of like, you're almost like a factory worker in a sense. Managers never really cared about their people's personal lives. Managers and leaders didn't really care about the health and safety of their employees. Managers didn't really care about the social experiences of their employees. Businesses never really cared about, or all they worried about is like, you're sitting at a desk doing the job, you're here from 9, you leave at 5, and I get to look at you all day doing what I'm asking you to do. And the pandemic blew everything up. Companies gone public, Oscar went public during the pandemic. Good work has been able to get done, and people are realizing like, oh, we can be at home. We can actually trust our employees. We actually can focus on it. So as hard as, I think the hardest part for a lot of my fellow colleagues and even challenges that I've went through myself is the pivot. And this is the actual work that we need to be doing. We need to be caring about mental health for our employees. How many babies have we seen in Zooms? We're getting views of people's homes and their kitchens. We're hearing like the dog barking in the background. Like, work has now become real life, and people have to ask and hold space and ask questions about the human existence as opposed to the tactical deliverables that I need you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I've been thinking about this. We're not talking about the employee experience anymore. We're talking about the human experience in their homes, because it is more difficult, watching reaching employees when they're teaching their children because they can't go to school, and it's just been a wild 2 years. I want to make one more connection to this. I had a really great time reading stuff you've written, watching presentations you've given. And I would ask our listeners, if you've got the opportunity, just do a Google search, LaToya's name, and watch some of the stuff she's on. It's really impactful. It's smart. It's fun. It's everything. But I want to focus on the What's Love Got to Do with It presentation you did. I'm a big Tina Turner fan. Lot of respect for her and what she's been through in her life. But in that Disrupt talk, you talked about loving yourself and loving your job. You gave that talk right before the pandemic, I believe, in December 2019. Of course, like we just talked about, the pandemic became a very big, difficult time. And that was just one part of the difficult time the last 2 years have been. When you think about that, is there anything you would add to that now about loving oneself, loving one's job, given what we've all been through in the past 2 years?
Yeah. So it's so funny that presentation that I did was an ode to self-care within the workplace. It was a time where I've had many colleagues kind of going through some personal matters and having to make hard decisions about their career and themselves. And also kind of like a call out to the businesses on like really understanding what love has to do with it. If you don't love your job, don't be in it, do something different. I know that is a very privileged thing to say because some people have to work, some people have to kind of put food on the table for their families. And really, I think I'm pushing it on the businesses to really make sure that people can have a loving relationship. People spend 80% of their time at work. It shapes our existence, right? We always say our friends and family shape us, but actually, where you're spending your time, your view on the world, your view on hierarchy, your view on, integrity of work and business really comes from the workplace. So it's so funny, I was thinking about that presentation, and Biggie Smalls has a lyric that where he talks about, blowing up like the World Trade. And he actually wrote that lyric several years before 9/11. And I felt connected to it in a sense of like, even like in retrospect, like putting that presentation out there and then this happening, right? And how care and self-care in this space, really asking ourselves what love has to do with it. I think in parallel to Tina Turner, why I used her was, if anyone's seen that movie or know her story, I'm also a Buddhist. And I'm also a fellow Buddhist in the same Buddhist sect that Tina Turner's in. I chant with the SGI USA, and she's also a part of that. And, she really, really leaned in on her career in a way where she worked through a lot of challenges, personally and professionally, to get what she wanted. And there's a famous part of the movie where she's divorcing from her very abusive husband, Ike. And he's like, I want to keep the car. I want to keep the house, all the money, everything. Da, da, da.
She's like, take it.
She's like, take it. All I want is my name. All I want is my name. So that branding of who you are, it's so important to take your name, own it, and really connect as you go through your career. Really feel confident in the decisions that you made, where they've been great ones or bad ones. You can really understand like the love that you have. What love really has to do with it is yourself.
Yeah. I know self-care has come up a lot in the past 2 years as well. So I thought I'd be remiss if I didn't ask that question. Another great presentation you've given. I want to move into the next segment. It's called Getting Tactical.
I'm trying to figure out tactics. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't didn't have to worry about tax.
This is really just like, I would love to hear how you would do some things. I want to start with DE&I. You talked quite a bit about that space, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know personally I would love to see more of a focus and change around diversity and inclusion as more than just a function in a business, but it becomes the DNA of a business. And we have a lot of listeners who are in HR and internal communication that can how can we in HR or in internal communications help build in that change within a business so that it's more than just a function? We are more diverse, we are more inclusive.
Yeah. I mean, I'll start here and then I'll give a tactical example on how to do it. Diversity and inclusion is my life because I am a woman of color in the LGBTQ community, IA as well, and immigrant families, mild learning disabilities, all the things you can think of. Like, that's just me. I'm all of those things as a human. And, when you think about how that impacts my life and others' other people's lives, the passion behind that becomes very clear. I think now, from a tactical standpoint, the only way that it'll work, it's not standing up a department. I don't think that's what it does. You could. I think that you can kind of like use that as an education or like a place where, people can like run programming and things like that. I think there's a lot of really great work that comes out of those departments. The only way that it works is if the head of diversity and inclusion is the CEO of the company. Period. If that is not your situation, then you are going to have a hard time really pushing any systemic changes. The person that's probably doing the D&I role or running the department is probably struggling. And the thing that we have to do is make it if you want to do this thing, then you have to be the head of diversity. At Help Scout, before I got here, my CEO said to me, just because you're a Black woman doesn't mean that you have to run diversity. You're my partner in this. But any moment you feel like you're holding the burden of pulling this over, then I'm doing a bad job. I've done something wrong. And that was like before I even started. Like and what he did was, here are all the things that I've been doing to date. And obviously I need some partnership on like how to like integrate it in certain areas. But I am facing the company every single day. I'm facing the leadership every single day.
Is there something in that when the person propped that up to you and said, here's what I've been doing, that you just saw a glaring hole that maybe people listening can go, yeah, we can change, we can do something like that? Like, what are some of those ways? I'm just very curious. So you coming in and looking at that saying like, this is very common that companies aren't doing X.
I mean, I think it's very common. I mean, I mean, listen, Amanda, like, I think, if your leadership team is not aligned with it, then it's going to be very difficult for you. Now, and I'm just going to be very honest. I think where you can take steps is present information, do listening sessions with your BIPOC community, lean into your ERGs if you have them, and provide that information up into whoever it needs to hear what's going on. And then ask your CEO, what type of community would you like to build? And here are some solutions to kind of do it, right? So I think that's the most tactical thing you can do. Indications of success is that your CEO is presenting this at the board level, which happens at Help Scout.
What does that look like? What gets presented? I assume there has to be some discussion on, as much as I hate to put it this way to cheapen it, as a return on investment, right? If you're coming in, setting this up, how do you show that there is success in setting up a diversity and inclusion part of the company? Yeah.
So how we do it is we have trainings. We have a post survey and a pre-survey and a post survey after the trainings, and we measure changes between that. And we've found changes that are happening. The next phase of it is the application side and continuing the conversations as things go and making those investments. So an example of that is we'll have like a cohort of leaders come together and talk about, what they've learned, talk about real life examples that they can implement. And what we're really asking them to do is not come in with any shame, but come in with curiosity, because this is what's important for our culture.
Let me just back up a little bit. The HR, internal communications leader, and even to some extent, like in IT. Oftentimes, I work with those groups to have better communication, whether that be, how do we tell better stories and reach people? So you talk a lot about like storytelling, being a good storyteller that shows diversity and brings, all the voices to the table. I guess my question would be, since you led HR, is there some way we could all be working together better to help with this effort?
I mean, I think I said it. It's like the first step is get your CEO aligned. Like this is an operational, like the people team, the HR team, they're operational functions, right? We support and help the business grow and scale. We're program managers. Like we make sure things go in and out the right way, in the most effective and efficient way. We create good experiences and things like that. And I think the problem that we have here is that we put it on the HR department to do that. That is not the role. Okay. So I think the tactical, from my experience, what works and what doesn't work, that does not work. What works is get your CEO aligned, right? And so to answer your question specifically, collectively get your CEOs organized around leading those efforts. Because if you do it on your own, it's still just an HR transaction. Anyone who's listening, and I'm just like speaking directly to my HR peers, you're shaking your head, you're nodding, because that's right. It's like, how do you get buy-in? How do you get, folks to kind of like follow what's going on? It always comes better and always lend a better message when the leader of the function and or the CEO is driving this initiative and not putting it on the burden of the holding the bag for the people team. Very similar to what my CEO said, what we're not going to do is have you only hold the bag on this. Like, it's my burden. I'm going to take it on. I designed the team. I hired the people. I designed my C-suite. I made my decisions, and I can't come and have you like fix it all because I'm making these decisions.
Right. All right. Thank you for that. I will move on. I think that sometimes I feel like even myself making lots of those connections, getting the CEO, getting all leaders aligned can be a bit of a challenge, across companies. So
that's the hard work. That's the hard work.
Yeah. I was hoping I'm joking myself. I was hoping you could give me like step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this. But the CEO, getting the CEO aligned is a great step. That
is the biggest step.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no like just like all of us, we're kind of like in this organization. I think there's sometimes a misconception that sometimes like even like people of color like have like the answer for diversity inclusion issues. But like, just to also be clear, like, this is a system that was not created by people of color. We're living in a system. I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate, in the right way. But to your point, tactically, start with your CEO.
Great. Awesome. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Let's just switch gears and talk about this idea of remote work. I assume are you able to work remote? Are you working remote?
So Help First is a remote first company.
Okay.
Health Scout has been remote from day one. It's been around for 10 years. Oh. And we have no plans of being anything else but remote. And this is also the future.
That's great. Well, maybe, I think that there's been a really difficult shift for a lot of companies, clearly, the past 2 years. I mean, I've even seen it just, one of the things I like to talk about with folks and see how they're doing, even just that new employee onboarding, right? That experience matters so much to new employees in a remote work environment or virtual work environment. Can you talk about maybe the difference maybe you've seen at Help Scout versus other places that weren't remote, and how they're doing that engagement really well, virtually and remote?
So I'm going to take it to a so I work in tech. Most of my experience is in tech. And I think the biggest, and I would probably say in my colleagues who work in other industries, there is nothing like being physically in front of someone, right? There's no exchanging of energy. being in a room with someone, breaking bread with them. Like that is something it automatically pulls people together much closely. I think where the challenge sits is I don't think this hybrid and remote like thing that people are doing, I don't agree with it. I think that people need to look at what am I holding on to? And I think here are the themes that I'm hearing is the holding on to the physical culture, right? So like physical culture meaning all the things that we did physically in the office is never going to be as good if it's using online and kind of discounting that opportunity. Also, what is important for people? Why do people need to get together? Like setting intent around why people should get together and be in a physical space. So at Help Scout, we do an excellent job, bringing our people through an onboarding process where you can meet colleagues and really focus on a personal experience. And that's something that we do here. Another thing that we do is twice a year, we pay for an all expense trip to a destination for us to have fun. I'm going to actually make an announcement on my LinkedIn that we are taking the whole team, the whole entire company to Dublin, and we're renting on a castle and we're paying for every single expense and accommodations. And we're doing all kinds of fun activities to really build that bond together and to continue to do work where we need to. Also, from a culture and engagement score standpoint, we are at 98% work-life blend favorable. Like, because we understand that like people should give the best 40 hours of their week, whether it's at 9 to 5, whether it's 7 to 8, whatever it is. Like, people should, because people have lives and families and people need to kind of work and juggle, and we trust our people. So, for those that are in spaces, I really can't speak too much about the hybrid model other than it is difficult to manage the culture there. And if we are answering the question around, we're not holding on to our physical space, we're not holding on to the fact that we just renewed our lease in this multi-million-dollar building and we can't let it go, we need our money's worth. And if we can't hold on to all these other things, and also making a decision around gathering people with intent and giving out budgets and structures for people to kind of do those things, then I really don't have much to say. And also, remote is going to be the future. I think we're kind of dragging our heels. I say maybe in 5 more years, it'll be the thing that we do. Unless there are work that people actually need to be physically in the office to perform the duties.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm going to move into our last segment, which is called Asking for a Friend.
Just asking for a friend. Hey.
What would you say to employees out there who are struggling with work-related problems, or struggling at work to be successful? Could be because of the pandemic or any other reason. Could be their pay isn't enough or they don't get along with their boss. Like, what advice would you give them?
Maybe we can take one. Maybe we can narrow down to which one of those, because they all have different answers. So which ones? So tell me what your friend would want to know.
Well, that's a good question. So I when I'm thinking about this came to me because I was thinking of the Great Resignation, and the impact that that's having. So that's, people are leaving roles. I'd say from what I'm reading, primarily because of pay, but also work-life balance and money.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to go back to the office, the pay, and they want better work-life balance.
Yeah. Here's my take on the Great Resignation. I am looking at it. Help Scout is benefiting from that, by the way. Just gonna put that out there because
are people coming?
Yeah, people want something completely different. People want to work in a company where they're treated like adults, the thought leaders that they are within their specialties, given the trust and the autonomy to be creative and do creative work. And a lot of for a very long time there has been such a grind, for so many people. I know colleagues have done back-to-back IPOs. I know colleagues that have done all kinds of different things, and it's a grind. And, people are resigning for so many reasons. Some people are, after the pandemic and seeing how life is so precious that you can turn around and someone can pass away from this disease, from this virus. And then you kind of look at yourself and be like, what am I doing all this for? Like, what moments am I missing in my life to where I can't do things? Can I explore the world? Can I be somewhere and come back? Like all these different things. So, I mean, so one of my team, one of my recruiters, spent like the last 3 months in Barcelona because that's what he just wanted to do, and got his work done, and it was great. And the only requirement we had for him was send pictures of what you're doing and all the food you're eating. And so it's really giving people that freedom to live and work and get work done. Obviously, there's deadlines. We have OKRs. There are goals. The business runs and functions. There are meetings that people need to be a part of, and and think through. But for the most part, we really like work around that. So if anyone who's dealing with the Great Resignation and you're making a decision, going back to the what's love got to do with it, it's like, what's more important to you in your life? And people are making decisions based on that.
Great. That's great. What do you think the biggest challenge is facing HR in the next 5 to 10 years?
The ability to be less tactical and more strategic. The ability to be business leaders, as opposed to, this is what my CEO, this is what my leader wants me to do, so I'm going to do it. And for us to stand up an industry that really understands what motivates people, not what motivates people at work only, but what motivates people. And the faster people can get to that answer, and say like, hey, business leaders, this is what people want. Or this is how you're going to get the most out of people from a motivation standpoint. Understand the human condition and educate the business on what that looks like. That's where the industry is going, because there's going to be more stuff happening and there's a lot of things that are indicating that we should be that way.
Yeah, so really focusing on that human experience and how to meet people where they are. Well, everyone's trying to get better at their jobs. You have had an incredible career. Like I said, I've really enjoyed listening to you, watching you, talking to you today. But what's next for you, LaToya?
I mean, what's next for me is I am at Help Scout and I am enjoying my time there, and I plan on, being there to help the team, the company grow and succeed. And that is, every morning I wake up so thankful for that opportunity. Other things that I am doing, but for the most part, like, doing my best work, growing and developing my team, putting Help Scout's brand and culture out there. It's the best culture. The results and the people show it, and just continue to grow that organization.
Great. Well, that's right. This has been very informative and a lot of fun for me to sit here and talk to you and learn from you. Before I let you go, will you tell our listeners just where they can find you on LinkedIn? Maybe spell your name as well. Yeah,
you can find me on LinkedIn. Please reach out. Send me a message if you want to. I always reply. LaToya Lyn, LaToya Lyn. I have like a little afro and a yellow top, if that's me. And yeah, please feel free to friend me or send me a message. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining me, LaToya. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you.